We're in England. The reason that it might seem bizarre that British people have come all the way across the Atlantic to sort of look at Detroit music from 30 odd years ago is because in the north of England there was a lot of interest in soul music through the 60s, and in the south of England, as that musical style progressed into funk, the north of England had an underground scene developed, which just stayed focused on a certain period of music in the 1960s. So, and we were part of that underground scene when it developed in the very early 1970s, when we didn't really particularly like James Brown or Bootsy Collins, or we really wanted that Motown sound of the 60s, that sort of 4 beats, that sort of pounding dance rhythm. And we used to go to clubs. The club scene developed in the UK, where you'd go in at 10 o'clock at night on a Saturday and come out at 8 o'clock Sunday morning, after listening to sort of 10 hours of up-tempo dance music. It was really the sort of precursor of rave music, house music, techno music. It was a scene that was just based around dance records and drugs and sort of things like that.
I see. I'm trying to think where to go from here. You're talking like about your book. What
well, yeah, because most, as I said before, most people are aware of Motown Records because it was phenomenally successful. It was the most successful black-owned company in America, by Berry Gordy. He tapped into the talent that was there in Detroit and made a good job of it. We had really good writers. He had the best some of the best singers and the arrangers, and the quality of his product that went out onto the record shelves was top-notch, because he wanted every record to be a hit. He didn't put a record out unless he thought it was going to be a hit. But a lot of people that sort of saw him having that success and having that sort of money thought, well, I'll have a go at doing that. I know somebody who could sing, and I know those songwriters, I know those musicians. They had a bit of money and they would cut a record. But without the financial backing to promote that record, like any independent record label, it will suffer, and they're just not successful. But the records themselves were good, but unsuccessful. Didn't make the charts because it didn't have the backing. Mm-hmm. And it's those particular records that that people from England focus on, because we're not bothered about Billboard charts, we're bothered about the music. And obviously you don't want to hear the same Motown record all the time. You want records that you haven't heard before. So that's when DJs started coming over to the US to sort of, to go through old warehouses and thrift shops and contact people that might have records that they made in the 1960s, and take them back and play them in the clubs. And it's still going on now.
Yeah. It's not stopped. It's It's like it started, say, around 64, 65. People were playing old R&B tunes in various clubs, and somehow it caught on. I mean, the buzz was generally around London in the 60, 62, 63, 64. And as Graham was saying earlier, that soul music that was down there, people carried on listening to it in the north of England. And it has its ups and downs. You can go to a club, there's about 3 big all-nighters at the moment, and 1,000 people go to each one. Plus, I've noticed listening on the radio in England that there's a Jazz FM. Radio in England's terrible. It's monopolised by the BBC and a few local radio stations. So to get there's a station on called Jazz FM, and they have a soul programme that plays this sort of music with a bit more modern music as well, modern soul music that is. And I've noticed over the last year or so, more clubs are happening, and a lot of the people who used to go to these things, like me and Graham did in the late 60s, early 70s, they've got married, got a job, mortgage, kids and all that. Well, those are starting to go away now, and they're left with free time, so they're going to these clubs again, and they're going out dancing again. Plus there's a younger market that's coming up and listening to it a little bit. It's not massive, but it's substantial to be taken note of, really.
I see. Is it just you that is writing the book, or is it both of you? Are you collaborating at all? I was just trying to think about just on that aspect. Like.
Well, yeah, the book project.
Who would you be targeting the book for when you release it? Like, if it, because there was a point in time where R&B was You know, like.
Well, yeah, there's quite a few books on Motown records. You know, I think there's about 10 just on Motown, and if you read any of them, I don't think you'll find mention of maybe any other record label in Detroit. You know, it's very much about Motown music, whether it's Diana Ross's autobiography or Temptations or Stevie Wonder or Berry Gordy's, you know, whatever. You know, they don't mention anything else, certainly not in depth, about what was going on in Detroit. And like I said, there was a lot of things going on there, a lot of good records coming out. They didn't have the success, but like I say, they're still good records. So the book, you know, the book that I'm working on will focus and redress that balance. I'll contact as many people as I possibly can that were involved in Detroit music and soul music in the 1960s, and just give them the credit that they're due, because there were some incredibly talented people that just weren't successful.
So you see like a bit of a resurgence in England to a degree of it right now?
Well, as I say, it's never gone away, but there seems to be, you know, ups and downs. Like, I mean, for me, the main period for me was like 67 when I started going to these clubs, until about 73, 74, 75, somewhere around there. And then I sort of got into other things. But it had tailed off a bit. I mean, I think partly people say it's because the records were becoming worse. You know, there was people in England were making soul records or mock soul records. You know, the same sort of beat, but like the voice wasn't there. The quality of it.
It's not honest, because usually when somebody comes out with something unique, it's usually honest.
That sort of subculture ceased to be really an underground movement. It became really popular culture.
Yeah, records got in the charts.
Yeah, some of these, what we refer to as northern soul records, you know, because they were popular in the north of England. They were American records, but because of that market in the north of England, they were labelled northern soul records. And northern soul became popular culture. It was fashionable. These records, some of these records are sort of doctored around with, and some of the record producers in the UK saw a market, tapped into that, and started making records and marketing them as northern soul, because young people wanted to be whatever, you know, buy whatever's trendy, and that was a sort of a trend at that time. And at that point, I think I got a bit disinterested. I thought, well, this isn't really the sort of music that I find very crap music, basically. You know, it wasn't the authentic, you know, real McCoy Black American soul music. It was a UK version of it, made in the 1970s, you know. So I lost interest, and I think a lot of people did through age. I mean, obviously you go through the 20s and you get interested in other things, and you focus on other things, and you go in different directions. But I mean, I've always had those records. I didn't sort of sell the ones I had. I used to DJ as well, and Chris used to DJ, so I still kept those records, and I was surprised when I came over here just how many other records I didn't know. I mean, I thought I was fairly knowledgeable, but there was just so many records that came out in the 1960s that, you know, they'd press up 500 copies, maybe sell 100 around the local stores, and, you know, it wasn't a hit. And so you try and find that whatever's left of that particular record. You know, if it's a good record, you'd like a copy of it. Consequently, those rare records are very valuable. You know, some of the records, there was a very rare, it's actually a Motown record, that sold for over £20,000, you know, which in Canadian terms is $50,000, you know, for 45. And it's not uncommon. You know, I found records that the average price for a sort of a medium record that's pretty good, that's hard to find, is you know, maybe 200 Canadian dollars. People don't think anything about spending that sort of money on a 7-inch piece of vinyl.
Yeah.
It's like the vinyl costs more than the whole recording studio.
Would have done when the record was made. You know, it seems ironic, but it is a UK market,
and it is mad. It's a bit, you know, it is a bit crazy.
And I think it's peaking because, as Chris said, you know, the people like myself, you know, I've got children. They've grown up. You know, the mortgage thing isn't so much of a problem now. So people have disposable income, and they can treat themselves to these records that they couldn't have tracked down 30 years ago. So there's a certain amount of money floating around in the UK at the moment, and people can sort of indulge in that sort of collecting hobby that they have.
Do you think, like, it's something I thought about lately, is maybe when the music came out in its earliest form, when you're first turned on to it, is that became the standard, and then you get more picky as you get more knowledgeable about it, and then maybe a few years later you start to look back and you compare everything to that first high or whatever that when the music that you figure was golden, do you see that you know, maybe the record companies were really smart in what do you call it, programming you to like a certain style, or you know what I mean, or a certain era, a certain quality level, and then after that you get very finicky.
Well, I think we all have our own personal favourites for whatever reason, whether it's the lyrics that sort of you connect with, or whether it's that particular string arrangement in that record, whatever it is. But I don't think it's manipulated to the extent that you might think it is.
Yeah.
I mean, these musicians over there, somebody would dream up some lyrics, they'd get musicians together. The whole thing would probably be done in a week from start to finish. And you know, they ran out of money, they didn't have enough to promote the thing, and it just died a bit of a death. But they were good musicians, you know.
Yeah, I'm no way knocking R&B. Like, you know, like I know that the quality, well, like it's just like anything. There's quality techno music, quality blues, quality R&B.
Yeah.
And there's crap, the imitators.
Louis Armstrong, good and bad music, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there are certainly good and bad records, and some of the good ones you can buy very cheaply because, you know, for whatever reason there might be more copies floating around. You can buy them for a few dollars, but some of the records that are worth, you know, maybe $1,000 aren't particularly good records. You know, I've sold records for nearly $1,000 that, you know, I'm not bothered about because I don't like the thing. I don't think it's a particularly good record. But, you know, record collecting, like, you know, say stamp collecting, you don't buy a stamp because you think it's a wonderful design and you've got to have it just because it's so beautiful. Stamp collectors buy stamps because they're incredibly rare, and so it gets into that sort of realm then, record collecting.